these great licenses, these great IPs. Even Monopoly, when
Sure.
we were presented with the idea to do Monopoly, I think it was in like '93. We were owned by Virgin at the time, and I said, "Oh man, I'd really love to do Monopoly."
Right, of
And
course.
no, the president was shocked. He's like, "What? Why would Westwood want to do Monopoly? You guys do role playing games, and you're doing strategy games. You're doing all this stuff, and there's sort of high end AAA stuff. Why would you want to do a board game?" And I'm like, "Oh, because nobody's done it right. You know,
Right.
Monopoly is like it's this idea, this imagination. When I was a kid, I loved taking little figures and moving them on the board and imagining these properties, Belmont and Park Place, and our artists just really dug it and they really got into it. And I worked on some of the animation stuff, but at that time, the Windows WinG was really hard to do. So Mike Legg and Mike Grayford had come up with ways to play video using the compression algorithms we had built before, but to do it in Windows. So we were able to make a Monopoly that really brought that fantasy to life with animations in the middle of the board. And then, frankly, the thing that really excited me about Monopoly was trading. I always felt it was a game about trading, not really a game about accumulation of things. And so I wrote the AI for doing trades in Excel with Visual Basic, actually.
Wow.
And then Mike Rayford ended up having the non-luxurious task of converting that into C++ so that it could go so it would work with the game.
That was the first Monopoly game, right? And was that one of your better selling products, or no?
No, it wasn't the first
No, it
Monopoly
wasn't.
game. I
No.
think they've probably done 4 or 5, maybe
Oh, really?
more. And no Monopoly game until then had sold more, really anything.
Really? Because it was more like UI and stuff like that, and it wasn't just...
No, I think the reason they didn't sell is because they basically just translated the game of Monopoly to the computer. And it's just, they didn't offer anything new. And it's been a big theory of mine for intellectual property development is that anytime you're working on somebody's intellectual property, after you're done, no matter what you were paid or not paid, whether you're doing it for free or whatever, the value of the overall property should be better after you worked on it. And that's really not the way most people think about intellectual property. They think, well, we've paid for it, so we're going to make this thing and just sort of hang it on the side, and we'll get this benefit, the shine of having IP. And actually, I think it's the wrong way to think about things. So,
are you talking about people? Sorry, are you talking people at the higher level, or are you talking about programmers and developers? I would assume that's not.
I think business people sign up IP, but I think a lot of developers view IP as a way of trying to make the thing that they maybe didn't have as much faith in be a little bit more valuable. And instead of thinking about the IP as the thing that drives the innovation and drives the idea, that's just my personal belief. And it sort of stands true if you look at the games that I've worked on over the years. Some of them were big risks that didn't work out, like Dragonflight. We were probably just Dragon Strike. Sorry, it was a flight simulator with dragons in the D&D world, and it was a great game. One of my favorite to do, and it did well-ish, but it didn't kind of really take off. But we were way too early. Flight simulators back then were kind of really crude polygons and not much in the way of textures and stuff. So probably just a little ahead of its time.
To back what you're saying, I mean, if you think about a lot of movies that were turned to video games, there isn't a lot of success there. We're talking a lot of rush projects and a lot of failures, but you've been part of multiple successes, which is within itself a kind of a remarkable thing.
Yeah, I've only done, from a movie point of view, I think
Dune, Blade Runner.
Right? Yeah, no, I think like I say, I think it's only been 3: Dune, Blade Runner, and Lion King.
And they've all been great, or at least much better than the average movie game.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I think that might be my claim to fame when it comes to translating other people's intellectual property. Is we've had hit or misses on our own stuff, and that's always true in a creative process. But when it comes to translating other people's stuff, we've had nothing but hits. Monopoly, I didn't finish the story there, but it sold millions of copies, which up until that time, hundreds of thousands would have been a hit. So it was really, really successful. Monopoly, it was for Windows 95.
Some people regard that Monopoly as the best of its kind, even to this date. And when I looked at the footage of the gameplay, what I see that you guys did really well is, make it intuitive. That seems like a challenge to bring a board game into a virtual space. How do you make it intuitive, just like you're playing with friends with cards and money, and right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Was that the big challenge?
It was the challenge. I mean, the technical challenge, the visual challenge that our team did was bringing the fantasy of Monopoly to life, which made it a delight to play. And it's not that visuals are everything, but certainly if it's not more entertaining to play, why would you play the computer game instead of the board game?
Sure.
And then the technical challenges were manyfold, but 2 of them which were really hard. The internet was brand new back then. Windows 95 was basically the advent of the web era, and so lots of things were just broken and they didn't work well. So our game worked pretty well. So you could play with somebody across the internet, which is not a trivial thing back then. And
Was it trivial
that
for
was one.
Monopoly, or this was the first then online
No,
Monopoly
it
game?
just wasn't. No, it was the first one online, but it
Wow,
was there
very
might have
cool.
been others that did like null cable modems and things like that. But no, it wasn't really. There were other games online, but this was the first that was kind of internet enabled Monopoly. It was literally. I wanted to put on the box 1 to 25 million players, but Hasbro wouldn't do it because they thought it was misleading. And maybe it was, but I thought it was cheeky. I
The
don't think
legal
anybody
team was
really
not having
expected.
it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't think anybody really expected that to be true, but it was kind of funny. But when we launched Monopoly, we launched it simultaneously in Europe, Asia, and the United States, playing a game against each other in 1995,
That's
which
crazy.
was like crazy back then. So that was one big technical challenge, and Mike Legg just did a phenomenal job of making that work. And then the second technical challenge was the artificial intelligence, because we wanted to make sure there was a variety of players. Because the fun of playing Monopoly alone against a computer, it gets pretty boring if the computer plays the same way all the time because you just learn how to beat them.
Spot on. Yeah.
So we created a master system, and I was the engineer of that, the architect of it. Grayford was the one who did the final coding because I wrote it all in Excel. Literally, you could open up an Excel sheet, and it was a Monopoly board, and you could set the conditions of whatever the time in the game was and all that. And then the expert system would then do a predictive model of what was the right thing to do at any given point. And that's where I built in all the trading. So I think that's what really made it a lot of fun. And as a testimony to how good it was, my son was probably, I don't know, 8 years old at the time or something like that. He was playing Monopoly with my mother, and my mom was never one to dodge a game. She did her best, so she would beat you all the time.
Right.
Well, he played Monopoly on the computer all the time. He got to where he beat her regularly, and she said,
Really?
"How do you play that Monopoly on the computer?" So she definitely wanted to know,
That's so
and she
funny.
did play on the computer and got better too. It's like, if nothing else, you could get really good at Monopoly playing that game, because you could even go in and customize your opponents by weighting what properties they like, and what do they like to be cash positive, or do they like to have um, will they mortgage properties, don't they? There's a lot of philosophies in Monopoly.
I bet people don't think about that. I mean, sure, they think about when they're playing against someone all the different things they could do, but to code a game and make all these features accessible
Yeah.
is such a
Well,
hurdle.
Monopoly allowed for 6 players at the same time, and it would offer 6-way trades. So it would say, I know that as a player, the Monopoly would go, I know that my name is, one of them was Dana, and Fox and Dana. We were big X-Files fans. Fox and Dana, right? So Fox would say, oh, I really want to get this property, and it's my turn. I'll stop to do the trade. But Nellie doesn't have what I want, but Nellie has what Joe wants, and Joe has what Bill wants. And it would go 6 ways. It would figure out recursively and figure out, let me just propose this big trade. It would pop up on everybody's screen that's playing. And you would sit there and go, okay, do I think this is a good trade for
Right.
me? And so the fact that it would make these complex, most of the time was one-on-one, but every now and then it would give you a 2-way, a 3-way trade, a 4-way trade, all the way up to a 6-way trade. And I think it just delighted people who played the game, because if you're playing by yourself with 5 artificial opponents, and somebody trades this, produces this incredibly complicated trade, it's sort of like this is not, kind of a silly, just, throwaway game. It's somebody thought really long and hard about it. And there were like 52 different rule variants that we had to implement to be an official Monopoly game, so you could play it in all the different places around the world. So
It's
it
a
was it
really
was
great
very
game.
fun.
Yeah, no, when I looked
And
at
I
the,
don't usually talk much about it. And
I
the
know.
music, let's not forget the music. I mean, Frank Klepacki did such a beautiful job on the music. It basically was jazz through the ages, from ragtime all the way up to modern, and it's just some of the most enchanting music, all MIDI. So just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.